rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, we're going to take a look at what happened over the weekend at I think it was called the Family Leadership Forum, if I'm not mistaken, where Tucker Carlson hosted it and interviewed a bunch of the candidates running for the GOP presidential primary. Some of them did good, some of them not so good. So we will get into some of the details of that. And we have a couple of videos that we'd like to run for you. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Also follow me on all things social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at The Carl Jackson Show. We're also on Truth Social or Getter if you are there as well. Today's show is brought to you by MyPillow.com. Guys, I got a new offer for you this week on MyPillow's 20-year anniversary with over 80 million MyPillows sold. Mike Lindell at MyPillow want to thank each and every one of you by giving you the lowest price in history on their MyPillows. You will receive a queen-size MyPillow for just $19.98. The regular price is $69.98 and just $10 more for a king size. You will receive deep discounts on all MyPillow products, such as bed sheets, mattress toppers, pet beds, mattresses, my slippers, and so much more. Man, this is the time to try out some of their other amazing products that you've had your eye on. So go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square. Use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, to receive this amazing offer on the queen size MyPillow for just $19.98, or give them a call at 800-858-0263. This offer comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. It's time to start getting the quality sleep that you deserve. Go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, 800-858-0263, and do it today. All right, now, let's get back to this Family Leadership Summit is what it was called. I'll give you some of the items that are in the news today. Apparently, John Kirby says the Secret Service did the best they could to find the source of the cocaine in the White House. However, there are reports that the Secret Service never interviewed Hunter Biden. So if you wanted to get down to the nitty gritty, we are still being gaslit by, sadly, the Secret Service and the White House. And another story, the California Democrats revived this child trafficking bill amid mass bipartisan pushback. Thank God. This according to Fox News. So Democratic lawmakers in California revived a stalled child trafficking bill Thursday following public pressure after they initially chose not to advance the legislation. The bill, Senate Bill 14, would increase penalties for child traffickers and would add the crime to the list of serious felonies in California. Anyone convicted of at least 3 serious felonies would face a prison sentence of between 25 years to life. Earlier this week, or last week now, Democrats on the State Assembly Public Safety Committee chose not to advance the bill because they oppose longer prison sentences, arguing it isn't a deterrent to crime. These people are absolutely sick. You're talking about child trafficking. I think in part the reason why they didn't want to advance this bill in California is because some of the perverts are on the legislation, or some of the perverts are the legislators themselves, and they'd have to pay attention to the border. These people are just sick. If you want to know where the United States is going, just look at California. Some of the stories that we share about California. The Biden administration, you may have heard this, has forgiven $39 billion worth of student loans. This, according to the Wall Street Journal, more than 800,000 older borrowers will see their federal student loan disappear. Student loan borrowers on income-driven repayment plans who have made 20 or 25 years of payments will get their remaining balances wiped out in coming weeks. Why would you pay 20 to 25 years on a student loan? Like, just pay the thing off, for God's sake. It makes except if you were waiting for, especially if you're a government employee, you're waiting for that period to lapse and then they pay it off for you. I don't understand why anybody that works for the federal government should have their loans paid off. All right, so this is according to the Education Department. Eligible borrowers will be notified starting Friday. A total of $39 billion will be forgiven as part of a one-time adjustment to loan repayment plans the Biden administration announced last year. Now, the money isn't free, so somebody's going to pay for it. Now, they're going to pay for it, but in a different way, and we're going to help contribute to paying for their debt as well. That's just, this is, man, I just can't stand where we are. This was a fascinating story. Check out my last podcast on affirmative action, why it was doomed for failure. But the New York City, New York City will pay out $2 billion to Black and Hispanic people who failed teaching exams, saying the test was racist. I read the story earlier. I forget how far back it goes, but it's something like 20 years of people. It was over 200 something odd people that had failed to pass the teaching exam in New York City. So they were unable to become teachers, unable to become accredited or whatever it is. And so these people are going to get at least $1 million each. And one of the biggest payouts thus far, there was a Black gentleman that had received over $2 million for flunking the test to become a teacher. The teacher's exam test. So if he flunked the test, why should it be a teacher? And then we're going to pay him back pay because he never became a teacher plus benefits. It's absolutely insane what's happening in the state of New York City. EPA estimates 70% of vehicles would be EV by 2032, dramatically increasing electrical grid consumption. So when the electrical grid collapses, guess what? Government is going to get exactly what they want. A bunch of people that are going to have to depend on government transportation in order to be able to go back and forth, so they'll be able to control them. That is all that is about. I think I've done most of the stories. There was a story, I mentioned this last week, where Illinois state law now prohibits landlords from asking about immigrant status. You can get in trouble for doing that now. America's oldest craft brewer closes down due to a destructive economy. Where did that happen at? It survived San Francisco's devastating 1906 earthquake. Bottom line, people are leaving these blue states. And so now the oldest brewery out there is closing down as a result of it. And that shouldn't surprise anyone in San Francisco. I'm sorry. If I had a business there, I would leave quick, fast, and in a hurry. When you're letting crime and homelessness and drug usage run rampant, I would leave. Carlos Alcaraz edges out reigning champion Novak Djokovic to become the third youngest Wimbledon champion. I'm not the biggest tennis person, but I can sit there and watch a game if I have nothing else to do. But I listened to some of it on radio yesterday, and it's always fascinating to hear those things on radio. All right, so anyway, there's your Jackson's 5 and probably more. I felt like I did a little more, but I want to get to this summit real quick. People are saying that this interview with Tucker Carlson has officially ended Mike Pence's campaign. I don't know if that's true. I think his campaigning was on the edge since the very beginning. At this point, he's not even sure if he's going to meet the criteria to get on the debate stage. This from a former vice president under the Trump administration. Obviously, there are other contenders that did there as well. I say this. Here's what I would say about Mike Pence's campaign and also Tim Scott's campaign. They don't know what time it is. And I don't say that to be mean. I believe that both of them are nice guys. I just believe that they would have been, if they were running for president in 1985, the Republican ticket in 1985 or 2000, we have something to say. They probably be great candidates. But given where we are now, where the radical left have co-opted the Democrat Party, and now you're fighting against cultural Marxists, all this woke indoctrination, hyperinflation. Well, we're not at hyperinflation now, but inflation and everything that we're going through, woke military and all this kind of stuff. I just think they're not the people for right now. And that's becoming obviously and blatantly clear. It's very clear with Mike Pence to some. I think it should be. I'm hoping it will be more clear to people with Tim Scott in the future, sometime in the very near future. Love Tim Scott. I think he's a really nice guy. Seems like it. I don't believe that he's ready for prime time. I don't believe that he's ready to become president. And frankly, I believe he's a little too soft to be president right now. And we have an audio clip that proves just that. But I'll go through the other people that were there. Vivek Ramaswamy performed well. Nikki Haley performed pretty good. I'll give you reasons as to why. Byron York laid it out at the Washington Examiner, a quick little piece that he did. It was clear that Governor DeSantis, if there is an alternative to Trump, that Governor DeSantis solidified himself as the alternative to Trump. However, you've got those media narratives out there, actually from both the left and the right, that I believe are trying to genuinely take DeSantis out even before a debate. And honestly, they've been doing a great job at it. If I'm being frank here, and I am. So, but we'll start here. This is an audio clip from Tucker Carlson, and one of his questions to former Vice President Mike Pence, and it is concerning Ukraine. And I want to talk about this a little bit after we play the video. But Gabe, let's go ahead and roll this, por favor.
Biden administration has been slow in providing military support. Make no mistake about this. We promised them 33 Abrams tanks in January. I heard again 2 weeks ago in Ukraine, they still don't have them. We've been telling them we'll train their F-16 pilots, but now they're saying maybe January we'll let somebody transfer some jets.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice President, have you, I know you're running for president. You are distressed that the Ukrainians don't have enough American tanks. Every city in the United States has become much worse over the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Drive around. There's not one city that's gotten better in the United States. And it's visible. Our economy has degraded. The suicide rate has jumped. Public filth and disorder and crime have exponentially increased. And yet your concern is that the Ukrainians, a country most people can't find on a map, who've received tens of billions of U.S. tax dollars, don't have enough tanks. I think it's a fair question to ask, like, where's the concern for the United States in that?
Well, it's not my concern. Tucker, I've heard that routine from you before, but that's not my concern.
All right, man. Okay, I wish we would have ran that video a little longer. I don't think we have the extended clip of that, but he explains his position after that. And here's the bottom line. I don't think he does a great job of explaining his position. And Tucker makes a great point, and that is, with all of the stuff that we're seeing right on the domestic home front, why is there such a large focus being paid to the Russia-Ukraine war, a proxy war that we're fighting? If we're being honest, that's a proxy war that we're fighting. Now, I said from the very beginning, here's the issue. Vladimir Putin was lining up his troops along the border at Ukraine. If we were going to act, we should have acted before an invasion. I thought he was going to invade, despite the fact that you had experts out there saying that Vladimir Putin wouldn't invade. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, doesn't common sense dictate that he's sitting right on the border of Ukraine with, I can't remember, like, thousands of troops that were just sitting there, like, for no reason, like literally right on the border. It made no sense to me, especially when you had Joe Biden in the White House. Trump was no longer in. And I'm like, why wouldn't he invade now? If I wanted to expand my authoritarianism, if I wanted to regain old Russia, if you will, then why not? Or the USSR, why wouldn't I invade Ukraine? That was my thinking. But like, dumb-o me, I let the experts kind of talk me out of that, and I was right all along. So part of the problem is Joe Biden should have nipped this in the bud from the first place, and we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now. Now, having said that, there's another problem with Mike Pence and his view on this. Again, you look at the domestic policies that are occurring right here before our eyes in the United States: cultural Marxism, an economy that is in shambles, homelessness that is rampant inside of our blue cities, and crime that is rampant. Our attention should be here first and foremost to the United States of America. But another issue is this. I think the real problem that people have with Russia and Ukraine, the Russia-Ukraine war, is nobody declared war. Remember, Rand Paul used to talk about this. Ron Paul used to talk about this. And even I was a little flippant at that. God forgive me. But the truth is, because technically that didn't have to be done, but I do believe that it should be done. Why? Because we have to stop being excluded from the process. The politicians in Washington, D.C. should be able to make a case as to why we should expend any of our military resources, our military, whatever it may be, intellect and all, why we should expend them anywhere else on the globe. What is the reason for us being there? And I, for one, I look at Vladimir Putin and I'm like, he should not have invaded Ukraine. But I also have to be real, and I have to look at where we are. I have to look at Zelensky, who I don't trust either, and all of the propaganda between both of the nation states and the corruption that occurred between Ukraine and Joe Biden and his family. And we have to be able to ask questions. If nothing else, even if we agree to disagree, everyone that is an American should be allowed to ask legitimate questions when it comes to the issue of the Russia-Ukraine war. Another thing that Tucker Carlson mentioned, and I wish we had this in the clip. I really screwed up there because I think we may have had it in that other clip that Tony sent to us earlier. Gabe, but another thing is when it comes to Russia and Zelensky, let me just read what Byron York wrote at the Washington Examiner. He writes regarding Mike Pence, another mess. He starts out by saying another mess from the former VP. Carlson's big question was about Ukraine and the issue of religious liberty. Carlson said that it was simply beyond dispute that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is violating religious liberty, while Pence said no, that was not the case. Pence noted that he had visited Ukraine multiple times, including recently, and religious leaders told him that what Carlson called, quote, persecuting Christians, quote, unquote, was not happening. Pence's mistake was that he simply cited authorities. They told me it wasn't true, instead of actually explaining what was going on. So Carlson's position, according to Byron York, was supported by headlines such as one from the AP that read, and I quote, Ukraine bans religious organizations with links to Russia, close quote. And another one from the New York Times that says, quote, Zelensky proposes barring Orthodox Church that answers to Moscow, close quote. Carlson and others call that the persecution of Christians, but other observers see Zelensky's position as reasonable. A piece in the National Review referred to Zelensky's action as, quote, Kiev's efforts amid its war of national survival to limit the influence of the Russian Orthodox Church and its patriarch, Kirill, to destabilize the country from within, close quote. Pence had a case to make, but he didn't even make the case legitimately. And I can tell you this. Listen, I don't know. Tucker doesn't know what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. Neither do I. But I think Pence screwed up in not being able to explain himself. And beyond National Review, I've read both sides of that. I've read from the New York Times. I've read from other liberal organizations and conservative organizations that have cited the very same not headline, but the same detail, how Zelensky was banning Christians and religious organizations from, doing what they do inside of Ukraine. But I've also read other stories that said these people were legitimately, the Christians there weren't just Christians per se, but they were legitimately working on behalf of the Russian state to try to undermine Zelensky and to undermine Ukraine. The truth is, I don't know what's true, and neither do you. That's why we should be allowed to question everything. All right, moving on from that. I want to go to Tim Scott, and then I'll hit the other candidates that were there real quick. Let's roll this video. This is Tim Scott being questioned by Tucker Carlson on the issue of all of the illegal aliens that have come through our border since Joe Biden has been in office. And I want you to look at Tim Scott. And I don't mean to be demeaning. I like Tim Scott. I can't say that enough. I like Tim Scott. I love Tim Scott as a senator. I love his story. I don't necessarily like his solutions. I've looked on his website. I wanted to see where he stood on the border issues. He does mimic some of the same things as Trump, which I think is a good thing. Anybody that says, wait a minute, Trump's policy, no. That should be American policy. We're so foolish sometimes as conservatives. Like, it's okay. Trump is going to leave one day, and guess what? Those policies will still need to be in place. And we got to think about that. I can't stand that. It's like, we can only fight with Trump for Trump, Trump's policy or nobody, like, good God. I'm glad Trump was actually, they were other people's policies in the past, except for like Remain in Mexico. That was brilliant. That was, I think that was all Trump. And I don't know whom within his administration, if it was him himself, I think that was absolutely brilliant, because that was just figuring something out on the fly. Trump just had the courage to do what other Republicans lied about. That was the difference. He had the courage to do what other Republicans lied about. It's as simple as that. But we need to be able to still use those. We still need to be able to use those policies. The question is, who do you trust to implement the policies? There's no doubt I trust Trump to implement the policies. I think the establishment, starting with Mitch McConnell, is going to try to stifle anything Trump does. That's my personal belief. So we have to be ready for that. You guys have to be ready to put pressure on. All right. Now, having said that, let me get to Tim Scott. I just think that Tim Scott, like Mike Pence, 1985, his campaign would have been great. 2000, his campaign would have been great. Maybe even in 2012 against an Obama, his campaign would have been great. But I feel like Tim Scott and Mike Pence are stuck in the 80s, the 90s, and early 2000s. But here's Tim Scott. I want you to notice what he does too. He gets into this preacher mode, and it's great because he does it to connect with the audience. But also what he does is avoid or evades Tucker's question as to what he will do with those 7 million illegal aliens that have invaded our country. Let's watch the video.
I wonder what you do with the millions of foreign nationals here illegally, many with fake papers, who are here. Like, what do you do with them? You become president,
yes,
sworn in January 2025, and you've got, let's say, 7 million people who've come in the last 4 years. What do you do with them? Do you deport them?
I think it's a very difficult task to deport them all at one time. But here's what we make sure they never do, is you never break the law and become an American citizen by breaking the laws.
Well, hold on. But would you deport any of them? How many would you deport?
I think you have to start the process of identifying where they are. Listen, this is a really important question. I hope that we don't miss this, because those folks who come into our country illegally, even those who are seeking asylum, go around our country, and some of the asylum dates for your court appearance is 2033, 10 years from now. So finding those who've come to our country illegally has to be a part of the job number one. And that means that we're going to have to take a look panoramically across our country and make sure that we stop this thing called sanctuary cities and sanctuary states that receive our resources to make sure that the federal government cannot figure out where the folks are. So in order for us to achieve the goals that the really brilliant guy on the stage, I'm not talking about myself, wants us to achieve. That was a compliment, by the way.
Oh, sorry, it went right over my head. I was like,
I want to make sure I got it. Sometimes I give compliments. I have to let people
brilliant's
know.
A little strong.
Okay. Really smart cookie over here. Achieve, we have to identify where they are. And I'm not going to pretend that will be an easy task, but that should be the responsibility.
Well, wait a second. The federal government's knows where everyone is, because everyone has a smartphone and they're tracking you.
Yes.
You know, so we know anyone using a fake social security number, why not just drop them off in Tijuana? Bye-bye.
Well, I'm going to appoint Tucker Carlson as my bye-bye ambassador to figure this out. So we're going to work together on this. And I look forward to it. A sincere question.
I'm sincere maybe the reason that people come by the millions, uninvited, illegally, making a mockery of the rule of law. I have to obey the law, but someone from Haiti doesn't? Or what? But they come because they know that no politician will say, come and you're leaving. They don't put up with this in Japan.
Absolutely. Well, they don't put up with it.
Right. They don't put up with it in Japan, Australia, or any other country for the most part around the world. We're one besides Germany that are paying the price for it, and now they're starting to realize, and France, where they're starting to realize, man, we were such idiots to let all of these people in that were unassimilated come into our country that had third world, worldviews, if you will, and issues, and we try to make them our own, and it's just stupid. It doesn't work that way. People have to go through a process of legal immigration. But Senator Tim Scott is stuck in the past. And I remember speaking to a candidate, a Tea Party candidate that ran several times. He tried to run, I believe it was 2 or 3 times, and kept making some inroads right here at the time. But the left was doing everything that they could to squash the Tea Party and brand the Tea Party of these radicals. And doesn't that sound familiar? And all this kind of stuff. And it worked. So, I mean, he ran 3 times. He didn't win. But one of the things that he said is basically this. If you have and I'm friends with him to this day, as a matter of fact. But he was like, at the time, when you have all these candidates that are running on the Republican Party, they won't say what they're for. They won't give specific positions because they never intend to be held accountable. And that just stuck with me. And I'm like, that's so true. Why would I answer a question, or why would I evade a question? It's simply because I don't want to be held accountable. So I can look on Senator Tim Scott's website, and it's not as strong as Donald Trump's website on the border. It's not as strong as DeSantis's website on the border and some of the positions that he's taken. And by the way, let me just say this for the record. I was leaning Trump going into 2024. I am 50-50 Trump or DeSantis. I am absolutely convinced that both of these guys would do a great job. Obviously, based upon the polls, I think Trump is the clear front runner. I don't know where he'll be at that point in time. There was a news article that came out yesterday that Ron DeSantis was burning through money. His campaign, he had hired way too many people trying to catch Trump. And this is a marathon, not a sprint, as he said before. So he's working out those kinks, but he didn't do some smart things with his campaign. So he's learning. Trump, on the other hand, is just a media juggernaut. I mean, the guy knows how to play the media, work the media. The DOJ, obviously coming after Trump, helps him, actually has boosted his, I don't want to say his approval ratings, but have boosted his poll numbers, and he knows how to play them. And he's smart to play them, quite frankly. But I will say this, and I'll get into this. It was clear from this family leadership summit put on by Blaze Media, and they did a fantastic job, that it was very clear that if there is an alternative, such thing as an alternative to Trump, I don't even like framing it that way, that DeSantis is clearly that guy. I think both media on the left and the right will be beating him up to make sure that he isn't that guy. So we'll see if he can prevail. I simply don't know the answer to that, but I'm 100% confident that if that guy got in office, he would get a buttload done. And the same with Trump, because they both understand Washington, D.C. They both have connections. Trump has dealt with the deep state, and that's why I think so many people are endeared to Trump is justice. They want justice, and they know he will go there and fight like a bat out of hell. And that's a good thing. But we got to make sure we get stuff done legislatively. And that's where I'm like, will DeSantis be better for long-term legislation? I don't know the answer to that anymore. But I did watch DeSantis put out a bunch of policy positions in the last couple of weeks that were totally ignored. It wasn't just the border. It was on shutting down the Department of Education, Commerce, IRS, all these ideas that no one is talking about. And I'm like, see, I know DeSantis, based upon what he's done here. The cat means it. Will it be difficult to get done in Washington? Yes, it would be. Do I trust that he would try to get it done just like I trust that Trump would? Yes. So I'm 50-50 on either of those guys. I just want to be transparent with the audience so that you know where I stand. And it's not like, oh, man, I can't make a decision. No, I'm actually happy with Trump. I'm actually happy with DeSantis. And frankly, at this point, I think those are the two candidates that are worth voting for in a general election heading into 2024. That's just where I'm at. All right, now, so we just played this tape of Tim Scott. I just think Tim Scott is stuck in the 85, 90s, 2000s. I think he is your typical establishment type Republican. I think he's a good guy. I think he makes a great senator. I think he has a great story. I think he's very inspirational for blacks and minorities that hear his story, that may be coming to the conservative side of things. I don't think he's ready to be. I don't think he's ready to be president. And based on the evasion of that question, I don't think he would do anything about the illegal immigrants that are inside of the United States. He didn't mention E-Verify. He could empower states. These are both things that DeSantis and Trump mentioned. And honestly, there were things that DeSantis mentioned to build on what Trump had already did. But now when I went back to Trump's website, it's like the same thing. It's like the same thing. And obviously, I got to give Trump credit because he started it, right? He was excellent on the border. Excellent on the border. Yes, I wish he would have built a lot more wall, but there was no doubt the establishment were standing in his way. But also, at the very, very beginning of his presidency, he signed 2 or 3 omnibus bills that basically shot himself in the foot, where the Republican Party were basically doing everything they could to stall the wall. And for funding's sake, and I understand, but for funding's sake, Trump signed the bills. I wish he would have vetoed the bills and demanded more wall. He didn't, and the Republicans never intended to give him a victory. The Paul Ryans of the world never did. And then you have the Russia collusion hoax, all of that kind of nonsense. But all of that to go back to Tim Scott and say, this guy is not ready for prime time. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to focus on him. But what I fear is that the Republican Party, we want our black savior. We want our black conservative too. And so just like the left had, and so Tim Scott is the man to do that. Listen, if you were going to elect anybody, or if you were going to allow anybody on that debate stage, I truly believe that it should be Larry Elder. He comes with solutions, not just a story. And his solutions are very conservative to conservatarian, a mix of libertarian and conservative, if you will. But he comes with solutions, and he talks about the state of, he talks about the border crisis and how it impacts the black and minority communities. You didn't see Senator Tim Scott do that. You didn't see him do that. And it's a shame, because I feel like if someone is going to be on that stage as a black conservative, I would rather it be Larry Elder than Tim Scott. But unless you guys donate, he needs 40,000 people to donate. Unless that happens, Larry Elder won't be on the stage. But I think he would make far better arguments and have far better solutions than Tim Scott would, just being blunt. All right, now moving on from that. Did I mention empower states? That's another thing, Tim Scott. ICE, re-empower ICE to deport people, allow states wherever they're going to be able to deport people. We can get this problem solved if we wanted to. The question is what we want to. And I'm not convinced that Republicans want to. I'm certainly not convinced Tim Scott wants to after that. You had Asa Hutchinson, who's a total mess. Nobody understands why he's in the race. Byron York says a lot of Republicans have asked why he's in the race. He's the former governor of Arkansas. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is already outdoing him. He's the former head of the DEA. There's no clear answer to why he's running. Hutchinson has no support. He recently admitted that out of the 40,000 donors, he only has 5,000, and he needs 40,000 to get on the debate stage. And he's created no excitement, nor will he. Nobody even knows who that guy is, except when they were disappointed when he sounded like a liberal as the Arkansas governor. At the leadership summit, Hutchinson stumbled and dodged under Carlson's questioning about Hutchinson's 2021 veto, I remember that, of an Arkansas bill that would have outlawed hormone treatments, puberty blockers, and surgery for minor children who say they are transgender. Asa Hutchinson vetoed that. Yeah, the guy should not be in Washington, D.C. or around your children, frankly. We talked about Mike Pence, Nikki Haley. Byron York says that basically she performed pretty well there. Why? Because she has experience, but also Carlson didn't hit her as hard. He didn't hit her as hard. The issue of Ukraine, she's basically in the same position. She basically believes, as Mike Pence did, maybe Carlson was just at that point in time like, hey, whatever. But he didn't hit her as hard. So this allowed Nikki Haley to do things such as go off on a crowd-pleasing and plausible reading of the White House's cocaine situation, according to Byron York. She said, and I quote, "I strongly believe this is a cover-up for either Hunter or someone very close to the president," close quote, "and they don't want to say who it is," close quote. Now, so Nikki Haley has experience, right? So she knows how to deal with policy, even if you disagree, but she also knows how to, let's say, work the crowd, all right? That cocaine story is very frustrating because it reminds people that there's a two-tiered, here I am. It's not a two-tiered justice system. You're persecuted if you're an allies of the left. You're set free if you're, you're persecuted if you're not. If you're opponents of the left, you're set free if you're allies of the left. So it's not a two-tiered justice system. It's a monarchy. It's a hierarchy. That's what we have. Mike Pence, Tim Scott, Asa Hutchinson, I think, DeSantis. Now, DeSantis arose as the clear alternative to Trump there, according to Byron York of the Examiner. The Florida governor was the last candidate to appear, and he was the best. Oh, I didn't mention Vivek. Before I go on, Vivek is the same thing. I love Vivek Ramaswamy. The guy is an amazing communicator. He has amazing ideas. But this is where I'm starting to pull back from Vivek, if I'm being honest. I'm Trump and DeSantis, and then I like Larry Elder. All right. Just because Vivek has no legislative experience. And I'm sorry, given what we're going through right now, I believe you're going to have to know a little bit of how Washington works. I think that's crucial. And I think Vivek will go in there just like Trump did. I think he would be more aware than Trump, frankly, because of what we've all seen from the outside. So maybe he would be more skeptical with the deep state, but he has no relations there. And I think that's going to be very important. Trump has some. DeSantis has some. They know the inner workings now. Trump is more familiar with it as he wasn't before. I don't want to send a rookie in there no matter how good his ideas are. Maybe VP, maybe in the cabinet. Let him develop those ideas. Let him see how the sausage is made and then run in a few years. But Vivek is very, very charming, very good. He's an amazing communicator. I think he's the best communicator, with the exception of Larry Elder, that you haven't been able to see much of, sadly. But I think he's a great communicator, and obviously he's wealthy, and that's taken him far. He can travel where he wants, do what he wants, and he has a great story himself. Pretty amazing guy, and I absolutely love him. I love the ideas that he comes up with. Don't agree with them all, but I love the vast majority of them. I'll tell you that. And he communicates them better than anyone that I've seen in quite some time. Now, Ron DeSantis, going back to him, again, he was the last candidate to appear. He was the best. He issued a strong defense of the abortion bill that he signed in Florida and suggested that he didn't expect a bill to be passed nationally. He was clear about Ukraine and applied a vision of American strength, with a caution about the mission creep that he saw during his own time in the military. He was also sharp about the overreaching of law enforcement and national security agencies, in other words, the deep state. He was particularly sharp about central bank digital currency. Nobody else is talking about this. I think Vivek may talk about this as well, but DeSantis has been talking about this and what he would do. Like, I don't hear candidates talking about this stuff, and this is going to be important. I think Trump needs to talk more of it. Obviously, DeSantis is good with the woke wars, and if you don't think that woke and cultural Marxism is an important part of the 2024 election, I'm sorry. You are Tim Scott. You are Mike Pence. I'm sorry. The wokeism has infected every aspect of our culture, our academics, our entertainment. It's influencing people, young minds, young Americans that now hate America. So if you don't think that we have to do something about wokeism, I got to tell you, you're a low information voter. I don't mean to sound mean, but that's just the case. You're a low information voter, because obviously we have to do something about wokeism. At one point in time, it wasn't too long ago, just a couple of months ago, I heard Trump on an interview, and this made me like, whoa. It made me, I'll be honest with you, it sent a red flag up, and I'm like, Trump, after all they've done to you, You mean you don't get it? But I think what he was trying to do, 2020 hindsight, he just didn't want to give DeSantis any credit. And I get that, as a campaign. So I was like, okay, I think that's what he was trying to do. But he was like, oh, woke. I don't really like the word woke and, all this and that. And later on, I see he adapted it and it's on his website. So he's a populist, and that's a good thing. But even Trump, because he's not God, so even Trump doesn't get everything right away. But the issue is, can he adapt, and will he be a strong force in Washington, D.C.? We all know the answer is yes to that when it comes to Donald Trump. But I also believe that is the case with Ron DeSantis based upon what I've seen. So I'm now, like I said, I'm now 50-50. I was leaning Trump, but I'm 50-50. I know a lot of people are running away from DeSantis. I'm not emotional like a lot of people on these things. I really try to think them through. I look at the stuff that DeSantis was putting out when nobody was paying attention and just bashing his campaign. And I'm like, man, this is the stuff that would totally restore constitutional principles. All right, I like this guy. That's where I'm at. I don't got time to play games. I don't worry about the personality. I know a lot of people do. I like policy, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be Trump that's going to be in there for a long time. It's not going to be DeSantis that's going to be in the White House for a long time. We're going to be the ones that are living through the policy. Trump and DeSantis, after this election, even if DeSantis loses, they're going to do fine. The question is, will we do fine, and for how long? That is the question. I think I touched on everybody. Tim Scott, Asa Hutchinson, Mike Pence, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, DeSantis. That's it. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Don't forget to take advantage of the new MyPillow deal, $19.98 for a queen-size MyPillow. All you have to do is give them a call, 800-858-0263, and mention my name, Carl, or go to mypillow.com, click on the radio listener square, and put Carl in the radio listener square to receive all of the discounts. And those discounts apply to a plethora of things now. So everything from the pet beds, mattress toppers, mattresses, my slippers, man, you get some wonderful deals. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. Join me on all things social media at The Carl Jackson Show, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at The Carl Jackson Show, Getter and True Social as well. And the thing I said, subscribe to the podcast wherever you go. All right. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.